I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stood there in the middle of my childhood kitchen, listening to my mother tell Aunt Caroline that I was selfish and never contributed anything to this family. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here, standing in front of a Christmas turkey that cost less than what I'd been sending home every single month for the past 12 years. My name is Natasha Brennan, and I'm 34 years old. I grew up in a modest bungalow in Mississauga, Ontario, the eldest of two children. My younger brother, Kyle, was the golden child from the moment he was born. I'm not being dramatic, it's just the truth. When I was 8 years old, I asked my parents if I could take piano lessons. My best friend Emma was learning, and I desperately wanted to join her. My father looked up from his newspaper and said, "Piano lessons are expensive, Natasha. Maybe when Kyle is older and we see what he needs first." Kyle was 3 at the time. When I was 12, I made the honor roll. I brought home my report card, beaming, expecting some kind of acknowledgement. My mother glanced at it, said, "That's nice, sweetie," and went back to helping Kyle with his coloring book. When I was 16 and got accepted into the University of Toronto's engineering program with a partial scholarship, my parents sat me down for what I thought would be a congratulatory talk. Instead, my father folded his hands on the table and said, "Natasha, we need to have a realistic conversation about university." I felt my stomach drop. "Your mother and I have been discussing it," he continued, "and we don't think it makes financial sense to invest heavily in your education." I stared at him. "But I got a scholarship. I only need help with residence and some of the tuition." My mother jumped in, her voice gentle but firm. "Honey, you understand, don't you? You'll probably get married in a few years anyway. Kyle will need our full support for his education. He's planning to go into medicine." Kyle was 13 and getting C's in science. "You're going to prioritize Kyle's education over mine because you assume I'll get married?" My voice was shaking. "Don't be dramatic," my father said. "We're not saying you can't go to university. We're saying you need to be more independent about it. Take out loans, work part-time. Your brother will need us more." I'll never forget that moment. The casual way they dismissed my future while banking everything on Kyle's potential. But here's the thing about being the overlooked child. You learn to survive. You learn to fight for yourself because no one else will. I took out student loans. I worked 3 part-time jobs. I lived in the cheapest residence room available, eating mostly instant noodles and whatever free food I could find at campus events. I graduated with honors in 2013, $20,000 in debt, and exactly 0 family members at my convocation. They couldn't make it. Kyle had a baseball tournament that same weekend. I got hired by a structural engineering firm in Toronto right after graduation. The salary was good, really good for an entry-level position. I was proud of myself. I'd done it entirely on my own. 2 months into my job, my mother called me. "Natasha, sweetheart, we need to talk about something." I was in my tiny apartment, eating leftover Thai food, finally feeling like my life was coming together. "Your father and I are struggling a bit financially," she said. "The mortgage, Kyle's university expenses. It's a lot. We were hoping, now that you're working and doing well, you could help out, just temporarily. Maybe $500 a month?" I should have said no. Looking back, I should have recognized the manipulation, but I was 23, desperate for their approval, and convinced that if I just helped enough, they'd finally see my value. "Sure, Mom, I can do that." "Oh, thank you, honey. You're such a good daughter." Those words. I craved those words so much that I'd have done almost anything to hear them. So, I started sending $500 home every month. 3 months later, my mother called again. "Natasha, I hate to ask, but could you possibly increase it to 800? Kyle needs a new laptop for his pre-med courses, and ours is just so tight right now." I said yes. 6 months after that, "Could you make it 1,200? Your father's car broke down, and the repairs are expensive." I said yes. By 2015, I was sending $1,500 home every single month. I was living in a bachelor apartment, still eating instant noodles, walking to work to save on transit, all while my salary increased and I got promotions. In 2016, I was made a project manager. My salary jumped significantly. I was excited to finally have some breathing room for myself. My mother called 2 days after I told her about the promotion. "That's wonderful, honey. So, we were thinking, now that you're making more money, you could probably send home $3,000 a month, right? Kyle is applying to medical schools, and you know how expensive those applications are. $3,000. That was nearly half my take-home pay after taxes." But I said yes. Because I kept thinking, once Kyle finishes school and gets a job, this will end. Once he's established, they won't need my help anymore. Spoiler alert. That's not what happened. Kyle graduated from his undergraduate program in 2017. He didn't get into medical school. His grades weren't good enough. So he decided to take a gap year to find himself and explore his options. My parents supported this completely. The money kept flowing from my account to theirs. $3,000 a month. Every month. Like clockwork. In 2018, Kyle announced he was going to pursue a master's degree in business. My parents were thrilled. I was told this would definitely be the path to his success. The tuition was expensive. My mother called with a new request, $3,500 a month. At this point, I'd been promoted to senior project manager. I was making good money, but I was also exhausted. I worked 60-hour weeks. I had no social life. I hadn't been on a vacation in 5 years. Every time I thought about maybe reducing the amount I sent home, guilt would crush me. But I said yes to the $3,500. During a family dinner in the summer of 2018, I mentioned I was thinking of buying a condo. Property prices in Toronto were insane, but I'd been saving a bit and thought I might be able to afford something small. My father actually laughed. "A condo? On what you make? Natasha, be realistic." I stared at him. "Dad, I'm a senior project manager at a major firm. I make a decent salary." My mother patted my hand. "We're not saying you don't work hard, honey, but between your expenses and helping us out, I don't see how you could afford a down payment." Kyle, who was sitting across from me, eating the expensive steak my parents had bought for this dinner, said, "Yeah, Tash, maybe you should focus on building your career more before thinking about property. I mean, some people just aren't meant to be homeowners." He said this while living rent-free in my parents' basement at 25 years old. I should have exploded. I should have thrown down my napkin and walked out, but I didn't. I just smiled weakly and changed the subject. The money kept flowing. $3,500 a month. In 2019, I was hospitalized with stress-induced chest pains. The doctor told me I was working myself to death. Literally. I needed to reduce my workload, find work-life balance, maybe see a therapist. I told my parents about the hospitalization during our weekly phone call. "Oh, that's concerning," my mother said. "You really should take care of yourself. Maybe you're taking on too many projects at work?" "Mom, I'm working this much because I'm trying to support myself while sending you $3,500 a month. It's a lot." There was a pause. Then, in a cooler voice, "Well, no one's forcing you to help, Natasha. If it's such a burden, you can stop." The way she said it made it clear that stopping would mean losing whatever connection I still had with them. So I didn't stop. By 2020, Kyle had finished his master's degree. He didn't get a high-paying job afterward. He bounced around between a few startup opportunities that never panned out. He moved back home permanently. My parents never asked him to contribute to household expenses. He was finding his footing and needed support during this transitional time. I was now 30 years old, sending home $3,000 a month because my mother said she'd rounded it down from the $3,500 to give me a break. The pandemic hit. My firm switched to remote work. I was managing massive projects from my tiny apartment, working 12-hour days, barely leaving my home except for groceries. My parents called every week, always with the same questions. "How's work? Are you managing okay? Can you still send the money this month?" Never. "How are you holding up? Are you lonely? Do you need anything?" In the summer of 2021, I finally saved enough for a down payment on a one-bedroom condo in North York. I was so proud. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I called my parents to share the news, expecting, hoping for some kind of excitement. You bought a condo? My mother sounded surprised. How did you afford that? I've been saving, Mom. It took a while, but I managed. A long pause. Well, I hope this doesn't mean you'll be cutting back on helping us. We've really come to rely on that money. Not congratulations. Not we're proud of you. Just concern about their monthly check. Something shifted in me that day. It wasn't a dramatic moment. It was just a quiet realization that I would never be enough for them. No matter how much I gave, how hard I worked, how much I sacrificed, I would always be less important than Kyle. But I still kept sending the money. Habit? Hope? I'm not sure anymore. In December 2022, I flew home to Mississauga for Christmas. I hadn't seen my family in person since before the pandemic. I was actually excited, thinking maybe things would be different now. I walked into the house carrying gifts for everyone. The house looked great. New furniture in the living room, a massive TV mounted on the wall, updated kitchen appliances. Wow, I said, the place looks amazing. Did you renovate? Oh, just some updates, my father said casually. We figured it was time to invest in the house a bit. Kyle came up from the basement. He looked good, relaxed. He gave me a hug. Hey, sis. Long time. Hey, how's the job search going? He shrugged. The market's tough, but I'm doing some consulting work here and there, keeping busy. That evening, my parents' friends came over for drinks. I was in the kitchen, helping my mother prepare the appetizers, when I overheard her talking to her friend Margaret in the living room. Oh, Margaret, you're so lucky your daughter helps you out, my mother was saying. Natasha barely contributes anything. We raised her, put a roof over her head for 18 years, and now she's off living her fancy life in Toronto, completely forgetting about us. I froze. Margaret made a sympathetic sound. That must be so hard. And you have Kyle to support too. Exactly. Kyle is wonderful. He helps around the house. He's here when we need him. But Natasha? My mother's voice dropped. She's always been more selfish. Independent to a fault. You know? I stood there, holding a tray of cheese and crackers, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I'd sent them $3,000 a month for 7 years. That was $252,000, $250,000. And my mother was telling her friend I barely contributed anything. I walked into the living room. Mom, can I talk to you for a second? She looked up, smiling. Sure, honey, what is it? In private. We went into the kitchen. I closed the door. Did you just tell Margaret I don't contribute to this family? My mother's smile faded. Natasha, don't eavesdrop on private conversations. You were 10 feet away from me. And you didn't answer my question. She sighed. Look, I was just venting to a friend. It's not a big deal. I send you $3,000 a month, Mom. I have for 7 years. And we appreciate it, sweetie. But that's not the same as being present. Kyle is here. He helps your father with the yard work, runs errands for me. You just send money and expect that to be enough. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I send money because you asked me to. You call me every month to make sure I'm sending it, and now you're saying it doesn't count? Don't be dramatic. I'm just saying there's more to family than money. Then why do you keep asking me for it? She stiffened. If you don't want to help anymore, Natasha, just say so. But don't make me feel guilty for accepting support from my own daughter. I left the kitchen. I left the house. I went back to my hotel, because yes, I'd booked a hotel instead of staying there. I'd learned that boundary at least. That night, I did something I should have done years ago. I logged into my online banking and pulled up every single transfer I'd made to my parents since 2013. I created a spreadsheet. Date, amount, purpose they'd given me, everything. The total came to $267,000. I'd sent my parents $267,000 over 9 years, and my mother was telling people I barely contributed anything. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that hotel room, staring at the spreadsheet, feeling a decade of suppressed anger finally breaking through. The next morning, I went back to their house for Christmas brunch. Extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, about 20 people total. Everything was pleasant enough until my Aunt Caroline asked Kyle about his plans. "Oh, you know, still figuring things out," Kyle said with an easy smile. "The job market is brutal right now, but Mom and Dad have been super supportive, so I'm grateful I can take my time finding the right fit." "That's wonderful that they can support you," Aunt Caroline said, then turned to me. "And Natasha, we hear you're doing very well in Toronto." Before I could answer, my father jumped in. "Oh yes, Natasha has a good job. She's doing fine for herself." "Just fine?" I said quietly. He looked at me, surprised. "Well, you know what I mean." "Do I?" My mother shot me a warning look. "Natasha, not now." But something in me had broken. Or maybe it had finally healed. I'm still not sure which. "Actually, I think now is perfect," I said, setting down my coffee mug, "since we have the whole family here." The room went quiet. "I'd like to clarify something," I continued, pulling out my phone. "Because there seems to be some confusion about my contributions to this family." "Natasha," my mother said sharply, "this is neither the time nor the place." "Really?" "Because last night seemed like the perfect time and place for you to tell Margaret that I barely contribute anything to this family. So I think it's only fair that I share some facts with everyone here." I opened the spreadsheet on my phone and held it up. Since January 2013, I have transferred $267,000 to my parents. That averages out to about $2,500 per month over 9 years. This doesn't include the gifts I've bought, the times I've covered restaurant bills when we've gone out, or the emergency expenses I've paid for when asked. You could hear a pin drop. My father's face had gone red. "Natasha, what are you doing?" "I'm clarifying. You told Aunt Caroline that I'm doing fine for myself, which suggests I've been focused on my own life and not helping family. Mom told her friend Margaret that I barely contribute and that I'm selfish. Kyle has made several comments over the years about how I should focus more on my career before thinking about things like buying property. So, I want everyone here to understand the actual situation." I scrolled through my phone. January 2013, $500. February 2013, $500. By December 2013, it was $800 a month. By 2015, $1,500. By 2016, $3,000. By 2018, $3,500. For the past few years, I've been sending $3,000 monthly. My Uncle David spoke up. "That's a substantial amount, Natasha." "Yes, it is. It's also most of my disposable income after taxes, rent, and basic expenses. I've been working 60-hour weeks for years to afford it. I was hospitalized in 2019 with stress-induced health problems. I haven't taken a real vacation since 2014. I lived in a bachelor apartment until last year because that's all I could afford while supporting my parents financially." My mother stood up. "Okay, that's enough. This is a private family matter, and you're making a scene." "Is it private?" I asked. "Because you made it public when you discussed my supposed failures with your friends. So, let's make it all public then." I turned to Kyle. "Kyle, do you know where the money I've been sending went?" He looked uncomfortable. "I mean, to help Mom and Dad with bills and stuff, right?" "Partially. A lot of it went to support your education. Your master's degree tuition, your laptop, your car repairs, your health insurance after you aged out of their plan, but before you got a job. Did you know that?" He looked genuinely shocked. "No," I thought. "I mean, Mom and Dad said they were covering that." "They were. With my money." I looked at my parents. "Did you ever tell Kyle that I was the one funding a lot of his expenses?" My mother's face was tight with anger. "We didn't think it was necessary to burden him with that information." "Burden him? Or maybe you thought if he knew, he'd feel obligated to get a job sooner and contribute. Can't have that, can we? Better to let him think Mom and Dad are just infinitely generous while quietly using my money." "Natasha!" My father's voice was sharp. "You're being incredibly disrespectful." "Am I? Or am I just finally being honest?" I turned back to the room. I want to be clear about something. I don't regret helping my parents when they needed it. Family helps family. But there's a difference between helping and being exploited. There's a difference between contributing and being the only one contributing while being told you contribute nothing. My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through. I spent 9 years trying to earn their approval, trying to be good enough, trying to prove that I was worth their love and recognition. And no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. Because the problem wasn't that I wasn't doing enough. The problem was that they never saw me as equal to Kyle. My Aunt Caroline spoke quietly. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because I kept hoping it would change. I kept thinking, next year, things will be different. Next year, they'll see how hard I'm trying. But it never changed. The only thing that changed was my bank account getting smaller, and my exhaustion getting deeper. I looked at my mother. Last night, you told me that money isn't the same as being present. You're right. But you know what? I tried to be present. I called every week. I came home for holidays when I could. I asked about your lives, your health, your needs. And every single conversation eventually came back to when I'd be sending money and how much. You made our relationship transactional, Mom, not me. Tears were streaming down my face now. But I wasn't sad. I was angry. Years of suppressed, swallowed, buried anger finally coming out. I'm done, I said simply. No more money. No more sacrificing my health and happiness for people who will never appreciate it. No more setting myself on fire to keep you warm while you complain that I'm not burning bright enough. My father stood up. If that's how you feel, then maybe you shouldn't come around anymore. The words hung in the air. This was it. The ultimatum I'd been dreading for years. And you know what? I felt relieved. Okay, I said. If that's what you want. I picked up my coat. Kyle stood up. Tash, wait. I turned to him. Kyle, I don't blame you for any of this. You didn't ask them to use my money. You didn't ask to be the favorite. But you also never questioned why they were able to support you so completely while I struggled. So, I need you to understand something. I'm your sister, not your ATM. And I'm not Mom and Dad's retirement plan. I walked to the door. My Aunt Caroline followed me. Natasha, wait. She touched my arm gently. I had no idea. Your mother never mentioned any of this. I know. That's the point. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. And you deserved so much better than this. I hugged her. She was the only person who said anything kind to me as I left. I drove back to Toronto that afternoon. On the drive, my phone kept buzzing. Text messages from my mother. How dare you embarrass us like that? You've always been dramatic. Don't bother coming back until you're ready to apologize. I blocked their numbers. All of them. That was 2 years ago. In December 2022. People ask me if I regret what I did. If I regret causing a scene or airing dirty laundry at a family gathering. Here's what I'll say. I regret not doing it sooner. I regret spending 9 years believing that my worth was tied to how useful I could be. I regret letting them make me feel guilty for having boundaries. I regret not standing up for myself the first time my mother told someone I didn't contribute. But I don't regret finally telling the truth. I don't regret walking away. And I definitely don't regret keeping my money for myself now. In the past 2 years, my life has transformed completely. I got a promotion to principal engineer. I bought a second property as an investment. I went on a 3-week vacation to Italy, something I'd dreamed about since university. I started therapy and worked through a lot of the damage from those years of emotional manipulation. I also reconnected with some extended family members who reached out after that Christmas. Aunt Caroline stayed in touch. A couple of cousins called to say they'd always suspected something was off but didn't know the extent of it. They'd dealt with similar favoritism in their own families. Kyle reached out exactly once, about 6 months after that Christmas. He sent me a long email. He apologized for not realizing what was happening. He said he'd gotten a job finally and moved out of our parents' house. He said he understood if I didn't want a relationship with him, but he wanted me to know that he'd confronted our parents about their treatment of me and that it had caused a huge fight. I appreciated the email, but I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe someday. My parents never apologized. Not once. Instead, I heard through Aunt Caroline that they told the rest of the family I'd had a breakdown and attacked them for no reason, and that they were hurt and confused by my behavior. When Aunt Caroline asked my mother directly about the money I'd sent them, my mother reportedly said, "That was a gift. Natasha gave it freely. She doesn't get to throw it in our faces now." A gift. $267,000. Given under pressure and guilt. Labeled as a gift. I think that's when I finally stopped hoping for a reconciliation. You can't apologize to someone you don't think you wronged. So, what do I want people to take away from my story? First, helping family is beautiful and important. But there's a line between helping and being exploited. If your help is expected, demanded, and never appreciated, that's not family support. That's abuse. Second, you don't owe your parents for raising you. That was their job, their legal and moral responsibility. They chose to have children. You didn't choose to be born. You don't start life in debt to them. Third, if someone makes you feel guilty for having boundaries, that person doesn't respect you. Love doesn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Fourth, being financially generous doesn't make you good if you're emotionally withholding. My parents took my money while treating me like I was worthless. That's not family. That's exploitation. And finally, it's never too late to stand up for yourself. 9 years might seem like a long time to let something continue, but the day you decide you're worth more than how people treat you, that's the day your real life begins. I'm 34 now, the same age I was when I walked out of that Christmas brunch. Except now I'm debt-free, financially stable, mentally healthier, and surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. I sleep better. I work because I want to, not because I have to send money home. I save for my own future instead of funding someone else's. And when people ask if I have family, I say, yes, the one I chose for myself, because blood doesn't make you family. Love, respect, and mutual support do. If you're in a situation like I was, where you're giving everything and getting nothing but guilt in return, please hear this. You deserve better. You are enough, exactly as you are. And walking away from people who make you feel small isn't selfish. It's survival. Set the boundary. Protect your peace. Choose yourself. You don't owe anyone your destruction.